You repotted your plant to help it grow. 2 weeks later, it is yellow, drooping, and dying in front of you. And here's the part that will genuinely surprise you. The new soil you bought had nothing to do with it. Neither did the pot. Neither did the way you handled the roots. The thing that killed your plant happened before you ever touched it. And your plant was quietly trying to warn you about it the whole time. Stay with me, because once you learn to read that warning, you will stop killing plants every single time you try to help them. Here's what you walk away with today. The real reason houseplants die after repotting, which is almost never the repot itself. The one rule that tells you the exact moment a plant is ready to move, and the single free thing that forgives almost every repotting mistake you will ever make. Let us start with where your plant actually came from, because that is where the trouble begins. Every houseplant you have ever bought was born in a greenhouse. A commercial facility where every condition is dialed in to grow the fullest, most perfect-looking plant possible. The temperature is ideal. The humidity runs high all day. The light pours in from every direction, far stronger than your best window. The watering is precise. Your plant grew up in paradise and it knew nothing else until the day it was boxed up, trucked to a store, sat on a shelf under harsh lights, and finally came home with you. Your home is not paradise. Even your brightest room gives a fraction of that greenhouse light. The air is drier. The temperature swings. Everything is a little harder than the world your plant came from. And the plant feels it immediately. So it begins a slow, quiet process of adjusting, toughening its leaves, rebuilding its roots to survive on less, recalibrating everything about how it grows. That adjustment takes time, real time, somewhere between 2 and 3 months of being left alone in stable conditions before a plant has truly settled into your home. Think about how big that change really is for the plant. One day it has perfect light, perfect water, perfect warmth, with nothing to do but grow. The next, it is in a box in the dark on a truck. Then a loud store under flickering lights with strangers brushing its leaves. Then your home, where the light is dim by comparison, and the watering depends on whether you remember. The plant did not change at all. Its entire world changed completely, all at once, in just a few days. No living thing adjusts to that overnight, and your plant is no exception. And here is what kills so many plants every single year. People will not wait. The plant comes home, it looks a little cramped, and within days the owner is reaching for a bigger pot and a bag of fresh soil, desperate to do something good for it. That desperation is the killer. Repotting a plant that has not adjusted yet is like shaking someone awake from a deep sleep and demanding they sprint. The plant is already working as hard as it can just to survive the move into your home. Tear up its roots and swap its soil in the middle of that, and you do not help it. You knock it flat and often push it past the point of return. The rule costs nothing. Wait until your plant shows you steady, healthy new growth before you even think about repotting. Not 1 week pale leaf. Real growth, leaves coming in at full size and strong color, the plant clearly comfortable. That is the plant telling you it has adjusted and is ready. Until you see that signal, the kindest thing you can do is leave it completely alone. I know how hard that is. You bring home a beautiful new plant, you're excited, and doing nothing feels like neglect. It feels like you should be giving it a nicer pot, richer soil, more room to stretch out. But think about it from the plant's side. It just lost everything it knew. Its perfect light, its perfect humidity, its whole world, in the space of a few days. The last thing it needs is for the one stable thing it has left, its roots and the soil around them, to be ripped apart too. Patience is not neglect. For a newly moved plant, patience is the single most caring thing you can offer. The people who lose the fewest plants are almost always the ones who do the least in those first crucial months. Now the second mistake, and this is the one that sends people in exactly the wrong direction. Most people decide to repot based on how the plant looks from the outside. The pot seems small, the plant seems big. They picture the roots crammed and desperate, so they buy the soil, buy the pot, and get to work without ever once looking at the roots. That is guessing. And guessing is how plants die. The only way to truly know is to look. For a plant in a clear pot, you can see the roots right through the side. For any other pot, slide the plant out and check. It takes 30 seconds and tells you everything. Roots barely filling half the pot mean the plant is not ready. Roots circling thick around the bottom and sides mean it is asking to move. The number you want is simple. In normal potting soil, wait until the roots fill about 80% of the pot before you size up, not half. Not when it looks kind of full, 80% with roots taking up most of the space and starting to circle the bottom. Most people never do this one simple check, and it is the cheapest insurance in all of gardening. There is no skill to it. You support the base of the plant with one hand, tip the pot, and ease the root ball out to look at it. If it is not ready, you slide it right back in and the plant never knows the difference. 30 seconds of looking can save you a dead plant and a wasted bag of soil. Compare that to the alternative. Buying a new pot, buying new soil, tearing the plant out, and finding out only afterward that it was nowhere near ready, by which point most people refuse to admit the mistake and force the repot anyway. That refusal is where so many plants are lost. If your mix is chunky, full of perlite, bark, or charcoal, you can move a little sooner, around 60 to 70%, because that loose mix keeps breathing even when roots are dense. But for most people, the rule is 80. Fill 80% of the pot, the plant is ready. Less than that, put it back and check again in a month. Now, before I give you the soil mistake that quietly kills plants even when you do everything else right, let me hand you the secret that matters more than all of it combined. The one thing that can forgive almost every other error you are about to learn. Hold that thought, because it changes the whole game, and we will get there in a moment. First, the danger of going too big. More space sounds like a gift. More room to grow, more soil, more freedom for the roots. But to a houseplant, all that extra soil is a trap. Soil the roots are not actively drinking from just stays wet. Wet soil packs down, packed soil loses its air, and roots sitting in airless, soggy soil become a perfect breeding ground for the bacteria that rot them. That rot is silent and slow, and by the time you see it in the drooping leaves, it is usually too late. Outdoors, this does not happen because the ground is alive. Worms, insects, fungi, and bacteria keep the soil full of air around every root. Indoors, none of that life exists at the same scale. A big pot of soil your plant's roots have not reached yet is far more dangerous indoors than it would ever be in the open earth. It is the silent killer behind more dead houseplants than almost anything else. You might be thinking, but plants grow in the ground outside, and the ground is the biggest pot there is. So how can a big pot be bad? It is a fair question, and the answer is exactly that hidden world of life in outdoor soil. Out in the earth, billions of tiny organisms are constantly moving through the dirt, breaking things down, opening up channels, and pulling air down to the roots. That living network keeps even soaking ground breathing. The bag of sterile soil in your living room pot has almost none of that. It is just packed material holding water with no army of life underground to keep it aired out. That is the whole difference, and it is why a giant pot that would be fine in a garden bed becomes a death trap on a windowsill. So when you repot, go up one size only, one. A 6-inch pot moves to a 7, a 10-inch moves to an 11 or 12. The roots must be able to reach the edges of their new home within a single growing season. Give them a pot so large they cannot reach the sides in a year, and everything beyond them stays wet, stale, and deadly. Now here's the soil trap nobody warns you about, the one that turns a perfect repot into a slow death. Many plants come from the nursery in coco coir. It is a light, fast-draining material that performs beautifully in a warm, bright greenhouse. But in your darker, cooler home, that same coco coir holds water far longer than ordinary potting soil. So picture what happens. You bring the plant home, decide it needs fresh soil, and repot it into the standard peat-based mix from the garden center, because coco coir is hard to find. Now you have two different materials in one pot. The old coco coir wrapped tight around the roots in the center, and the new peat mix around the outside, and the two dry out at completely different speeds. The outer peat dries first. You poke your finger in the top, feel dry soil and water, but the coco coir core hugging your actual roots is still soaked from last time. Every time the surface feels dry and you water, you are pouring more water onto a center that never dried out. The roots sit drowning in that hidden wet core. The air vanishes, the rot starts, and the whole time, your finger test is cheerfully telling you to keep watering. This is exactly why the finger test fails on a freshly repotted plant. It only reads the outer layer, and the outer layer is almost never the problem. The problem is buried in the core, around the roots, where the old material holds water at its own stubborn pace. The plant dies, and you blame the repot, or yourself, or the soil, when the truth is, you are watering on information that only told you half the story. The fix is to think about this before you repot. If the plant came in coco coir, try to repot into coco coir so the whole pot dries evenly. If you cannot find it, use a chunky, well-aerated mix instead of dense peat, so the entire pot breathes at one rate. And stop trusting your finger. Judge by weight instead. Lift the pot right after watering and feel how heavy it is. Fast growth means hungry, active roots drinking water constantly. Light is the factor that decides whether every other factor even matters. And the reverse is the part almost everyone misses. A plant that has been sitting in low light for months has been slowly dying the entire time, even if it still looks fine. Its roots are sluggish, its growth has stalled, its healthy-looking leaves are not being replaced fast enough. It is fading, one dim day at a time. Then you repot it to help, and the shock of the move simply finishes what the darkness started. The plant dies within weeks, and you blame the repot. But the repot did not kill it. Months of weak light did. The repot was just the final push that ended a death already long underway. This is why so many people repot a plant. Watch it die, repot the replacement, and watch that one die too, never understanding why their technique keeps failing. The technique is usually fine. The light is not. They keep adjusting soil and pots and watering schedules, chasing every variable except the one that actually controls their plant's life. Fix the light first before anything else, and watch how many of your other problems quietly disappear. So here is the whole system, start to finish, and it costs nothing but patience and the willingness to look before you act. When a new plant comes home, set it in your brightest spot and leave it completely alone for 2 to 3 months. Fight every urge to repot or refresh the soil. Watch the plant instead of touching it. When you see steady, healthy new growth, full-size leaves, strong color, a plant that clearly looks settled, that is your green light. Until then, doing nothing is the most loving thing you can do. When that signal finally comes, check the roots. Slide the plant gently out and look. Roots filling about 80% of the pot mean it is ready. Less than that, put it back and wait another month. If the roots are wound into a tight, circling mass, the plant has been ready for a while, but checking late is always safer than repotting early. When you do repot, go up one size only. Match your new soil to whatever the plant came in, or use a loose, chunky mix that drains and breathes evenly throughout. Throw out the finger test and weigh the pot instead. Lift it wet, lift it dry, and learn the difference. That weight is the most honest signal your plant will ever give you. And then give it the best light you have. Not soft light in the middle of the room. The brightest window, the most direct sun it can take without scorching. The spot with the most hours of light all day. If your windows are not enough, a simple grow light placed close will do more for your plant than any soil or pot ever could. Then step back and leave it alone, and let it do what plants have done far longer than people have been trying to help them. The new soil was never the fix. The new pot was never the fix. The fix is time, the right moment, the right size, the right light, and the honesty to look at the roots before you assume your plant needs anything at all. Every one of those costs nothing. And almost every plant you have ever lost to a repot was probably ready to be saved by something free that you already had the whole time. Share this with the one person you know who just came home from the garden center with a new pot, a fresh bag of soil, and a beautiful plant they only bought last week, before they make the move that kills it